because we are going to have an afternoon chat with my dear friend Rebecca. So I wanted to just turn it over to you. Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself, please, first.
That was so quick. Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
So I'm Rebecca Thomas, more than a life coach. I am a women's life coach here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but I actually work nationally. I'm in the greater Grand Rapids area, and I love working with women. There's so many things to enhance their authenticity, to help build self trust, to help them tap into their intuition. I actually recently pivoted my niche a little bit, which we still talk about all of those things, but to include movement and focus more on the professional woman, like someone 30s to 50s who's actually been scaling professionally and might even be pivoting now that they're kind of that midlife stage and either feeling like, okay, I've done all the hard work, now what? And or also wondering like I was sold this lie and told that if I did all these things that I would find fulfillment and purpose, and now I'm on the other side of doing all those things and my life feels like a shell. So I help them get out of their houses, get out of their businesses, get out of their minds, and get back into their lives.
Isn't it so cliche, but like midlife crisis and reinvention, it's truly a thing.
Right. And I love, so it was funny. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan, and she has a quote, and it's actually referenced. I think it's Atlas of the Heart. She talks about it, but maybe not. Might have been one of her podcasts. But she calls it midlife unraveling, which I
Yeah.
feel is so much more like I'm not a hot mess. I'm just figuring out who I am.
I actually agree even more with that. I think a couple of different things I'm going to bring up in just a moment, but tell us about you own multiple different businesses and
Mhm.
collaborations. Can you just touch on those really quickly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll start with the one that existed first and kind of navigate through that and then tie them all together. Um, I was in the restaurant industry for about 20 years, hospitality, lots of management positions, lots of leading teams of women. I'm also the oldest of seven, and I have five younger sisters. So lots of feminine energy and lots of like mama bear energy when it came to those things because I'm significantly older than my sisters. Um, when I moved to Grand Rapids, I actually ended up getting out of the hospitality industry because I was a single mom, no support in the local area, and wanted to be able to have more time with my son and not have him have to be in daycare. I knew if I stayed in hospitality, the only way to make more money or progress in that industry would be to go into management, and then I would not have the same amount of time with him, and I wasn't okay with that. So I did what everybody does, I think. Not really. Applied for every job I didn't think I could get, and I ended up in email marketing. So, segued into email marketing, did that for a few years, turned into a salary work from home position. And during that time, I was trying to figure out how to supplement my income and still keep that flexibility that I had with the work from home position, and stumbled on Airbnb at one point and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm amazing at that," because I would have friends and family come stay with me. I loved having people in my home. And part of that was because, like, when they came to my home, there was no expectation of how they were supposed to show up. It was just use this for what we need. And there was always so much beauty and connection in their visits, and just like this restoration for them, like a reset for them. And so when I saw Airbnb, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's definitely the thing. And so I started actually having people stay in my house. So we had one bedroom in our home. The rest of the home was shared. There was no ensuite for them. There was no separate living space. It was literally like my bedroom, my son's bedroom, their bedroom, and then all shared spaces as far as like the common living spaces. So that was the first piece. And then while I was doing the Airbnb, started listening to Lori Harder's Earn Your Happy
Ah,
podcast.
there you go.
So love her, and was really feeling inspired to do something different with my life. And I always joke about the fact, and it's not really a joke, like it's the truth. I was trying to demand from the universe for like 10 years. What am I supposed to be doing with my life? What is it? Show me the thing. And of course, not getting any answers because I was trying to control that whole narrative. And then while I was listening to her podcast, all the episodes, all the different people she was interviewing was just opened up to this different way of thinking and these different perspectives, and started letting go of like how it should look and just started to do what felt right. And so combined the Airbnb experience of having all of these random strangers in my home that were all ages, races, cultures, religion, sexes, like all of the things, like just complete diverse array of people that were in my home, and recognizing that I was really great at holding space for them, but also having these beautiful, like existential conversations where I was challenging their narrative, and they're like, I'm in this situation and I don't know how to get out of it. And so just really being able to hold space for them, but then also challenge what that inner narrative was and help them see things differently in a way that didn't feel like I was trying to tell them what to do, but more guide them towards themselves and like their inner knowing. So combine that with listening to the podcast at the time, and I ended up hearing the term life coach at some point, and I was like, ding, 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 that's the thing. Like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was my happy accident of falling into my or my path. It was life coach, Airbnb. Airbnb brought me to life coaching. So within 6 months, I think, of realizing that life coaching was the thing, those 6 months I really struggled with. So funny. Do I let go of the salary work home from position? And like all of a sudden, as a single mother, like how irresponsible of me to like just take this chance. I had no backup plan. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't have some kind of reserve or safety net that was going to hold me up. But I was like, I knew I was supposed to do that thing. So I struggled mentally for like 6 months to take that next step, and just got to the point where I physically was in so much pain because I knew what I was supposed to be doing and I wasn't doing it. And then one night had a conversation with my boyfriend, and it was early in our relationship, and just was like, okay, we need to talk. I have to do this thing. I don't know what it looks like. I don't have any more answers than you do. I've probably got more questions than you do. All I know is that I trust myself and I trust my purpose and I trust my path, and that I will figure it out because I refuse not to figure it out. And he was like, okay. So that's when I stepped into life coaching. So I've been doing that for 4.5 years now. And then last year, another happy accident, haha. A really good friend of mine, Alicia Shoemaker, and I ended up forming a women's event company called Kaleidoscope Effect, which is like the community piece to my coaching. So my coaching previously has been very much one-on-one, but the Kaleidoscope Effect is very much curating our own events that embrace women, and we inspire, celebrate, connect, educate, and empower them. And the big piece of that is just putting more joy and fun back into their lives, but also allowing them to bask in their own wins. So that's the super condensed, but not really condensed story of all the things.
I love it. I love it. It's so crazy how all the pieces connect. It's
Mm-hmm.
such an interesting little tapestry that weaves together. So we met at an event. So Lori Harder and I met way back in 2006. So it's so fascinating that just those little threads of commonality. And then Lori connected with Lindsay. Lindsay hosted Powerhouse events, and we actually met at a big event last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the interesting part of this whole conversation, when it comes all the way back to the beginning of our conversation that we were just having about like midlife and the unraveling that Brene Brown talks about, I would actually agree that I think it's part of kind of almost like peeling back the layers of the onion to discover who you really are versus who you think you have to be. And
Mm-hmm.
like allowing yourself to live kind of all out the further and further along your journey becomes. And for a while, what's so interesting is I actually went to that first Powerhouse event last year because I wanted some feminine energy. Like I was just mentoring with men primarily. Business was growing and had been
Mm-hmm.
for since about September of 2018 is when I really pivoted into the e-commerce space, and really, really took my business to another level. So I was like, okay, we need some women around here. Like I need to
Uh-huh.
come back in. So I saw Lindsay and Lori was going to be a speaker. So that is where we connected because I was at this point now living in Arizona. And I got in the room just to get around some women and try to figure out what I wanted with my life. And
Mhm.
one of the things that was happening was I was like, I don't think I'm as social. I always thought I was an extrovert, but I'm not sure I
Oh,
was an extrovert.
interesting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure I'm an extrovert. Like, I think I'm having social anxiety and all this stuff. And it was different for me because I didn't want to run around to events and I didn't want to travel as much as I had before COVID and all these different things. And I thought it was all COVID that had brought these changes on me. And I think some of that's still true. But then someone else just said, you hit 40, and honestly, you finally figure out that as a woman, even though you thought you should do all those things, you just can finally decide to quit doing the things you don't want to do
Mm.
and start
Mhm.
picking and choosing and stop running in all directions. And she said the other part of it is you finally started to design and create a life, your house, your family, everything that you absolutely love, and you don't need to escape it anymore.
Mhm.
Like you're not running from anything and still trying to find answers elsewhere. You're starting to look within and trusting the answers that are there. It just feels really, really different.
Mhm.
So that's why I just love that whole idea of unraveling and talking.
Uh-huh.
I mean, not so much a crisis. I mean, it can feel like a crisis.
Oh, there's definitely moments that feel like a crisis.
For sure, for sure.
And the more you fight it, the worse it gets.
Exactly, right?
Mhm.
So it's so interesting how it comes back full circle and all the little pieces over the years end up colliding and it's fun. So then
Mhm.
we reconnected again this year at this year's event and we've been kind of chatting about different things and Rebecca's visiting a number of different podcasts. And I said, well, I'm not doing a podcast, but I just like going live and having great conversations about leadership and
Mhm.
life. And do you want to be a guest? Should we just have a conversation? She said, yep, absolutely. So here we are.
Yep. Didn't have to think twice. Of course, I wanna have a conversation with my friend.
Exactly. Exactly. So what else are you seeing when you talked about putting the individual back in business? Talk to
Mhm.
me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that comes from a couple of things. So first of all, before we went to Powerhouse Women this year, I ended up going on a walk with one of my mentors and was just talking through like some of my pain points as a coach, some of the pain points of living in West Michigan, as far as how women specifically, I think, perceive their self value here, and how that translates with what they're willing to invest in to expand and grow themselves personally. So talking to her about that, but then she also owns her own PR firm. So with our events company, we were experiencing and seeing some things too, and talking through conversation with her about those things. It was so interesting because at one point, and she has what, four businesses and is on all these boards and committees and is super politically active. She's in a lot of spaces and definitely accomplished and still scaling. And so when I was talking to her about all of this, it was just so interesting to me how at one point towards the beginning of the conversation, she said, thank you so much. Like, a lot of times when we reach out to people, I feel like, at least in our area, it's like, hey, let's go get lunch or brunch or happy hour or coffee. And those seem more standard, but I always love to suggest like a walk and talk.
Mhm.
So when I reached out to her and I know that she loves to walk, I was like, do you want to do a walk and talk? She was like, absolutely. So during our conversation right before Powerhouse Women, it was really interesting to me that like when we first started on our walk, she looked at me, she's like, thank you so much for asking me, to walk with you. She's like, I haven't walked since the last time we connected. The last time we connected was like a year and a half ago, like in person, not just, texts and voice messages, but like actually in person. It was like a year and a half ago. And she said that I just couldn't get it off my mind. I just was shocked, kind of. And then I started thinking about my other clients and the connections that I make here in the Grand Rapids area and how many of them tend to be, and because I suggest it, on these walk in talks. And the more I started to think about it, and I know another thing that a lot of women that I work with, they struggle with presence as well. So being present, justifying that time to slow down or even taking
Mhm.
time for themselves, even if they're not really slowing down. And as I started to think about all that, really wanted to shift into a space of, all of these women who have accomplished these amazing things, and they're growing these amazing things, but are still leaving themselves out of the equation at some point. So putting the individual back in business, that's how that ties back around. Like, you have a life to live while you're doing this. And it's really easy, I think, to get caught up in building the thing and leave yourself on the outside of that. And then you get to the other side of it and you're like, but wait a minute, like, where am I? And to justify again, or be really intentional about putting yourself back into areas of your life, I think it can be hard to justify that, and hard to create the new habits to be able to do that. So that's something I decided I wanted to start doing, was taking that approach to things, to being more present, moving more, not having that guilt about not taking care of yourself, like physically taking care of yourself, but also recognizing, like, in those walk and talks, like the presence that's available to us, and being able to notice the beautiful things around us and the things that bring us joy, and have a life that we're interacting with versus like it's happening at us. The other piece is that, as I just ended up creating this conscious milestone program, which is a corporate training that I just launched. And so, speaking to the individual in business, the other thing that I read recently, because I love to read and hear all the podcasts and have amazing conversations, was that a lot of the goals that we pick, not only in business, whether we're a corporation or a small business or a solopreneur, but then also on an individual level, is that a lot of the goals that we pick are very corporate framed. So it's
Mhm.
arbitrary, random number, don't really feel that connected to it. And we might know that we need to accomplish that thing, but being able to personally connect with it is a different story.
Mhm.
So the training that I created is to take a look at, okay, what are the things that motivate you as an individual? What are the pain points that you're experiencing that tie to this overarching goal, and being able to identify those, but then being able to put in these the milestones, these plotting points throughout that experience, from beginning of starting the goal to the end of achieving it, that give you time to celebrate, give you time for accountability, but then also give you time to recognize progress that might not be as measurable, but can definitely be
Mhm.
something that's felt through emotion, and feeling and experience. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it all. So we literally picked up and moved across the country so that we could have a walk every morning, because it changes the
Mm-hmm.
entire life experience.
Yeah.
Have you read The Comfort Crisis?
It's like, and I can't remember which. It's either in a shopping cart or on a screenshot, but that's on the list of things. It might
I
even
think
be on a hold.
I
But
think
yes.
I think I recommended it to you, and I was like, "You have to read it. We have to do a book
Uh,
talk on this," because it talks about how when you're walking, in
mhm,
particular outside in nature, there are
mhm,
literally chemicals and hormones released in your brain that allow you to think at a different level. And
mhm.
my friend Jackie, also a powerhouse woman, great friend from long, long ago. We actually just had our 13-year anniversary, and we met because she randomly posted on Facebook that she wanted to do a duathlon the next morning, and her friend was sick and couldn't do it. And I was
Oh.
like, I'm always that person who needs someone crazy to do something with me, and no one's ever around to do it. I'm like, "I'll do it with you."
Uh-huh.
Again, we had met through Lori's workout
Right.
class, but never connected. So that's super funny because, again, there's a common thread. Lori just connects all of us.
Uh-huh.
But anyways,
Uh-huh.
so she ended up moving to California and then moved here to Arizona. So now we take walks all the time. And she posted yesterday too, put 2 women on a walk and you will have new
Rule
businesses,
the world by
solve
the
the
time you're
problem,
done.
rule the world.
Mhm.
Absolutely rule the world. I love the walk and talk idea, but there
Mhm.
actually is chemical and hormone reason
Mhm.
for such drastic ideas and momentum. I think all the Tony Robbins stuff always comes out with emotion follows motion. So, like, if you can
Mhm.
just walk every morning, so it's literally one of the things that we changed and why we moved from Minnesota and the Midwest down to Arizona. Even if it's 116 later in the day, you can take a walk at 5 a.m.
Right.
You can get it done. You can get
Yep.
it done. So I think there's so much to that, Rebecca, and it's really powerful. It's really,
Mhm.
really powerful. And then the second part I was gonna mention something too was, you talked about walk and talks. Oh, and the corporate, like
Mhm.
bringing those conversations to corporate. It's such an interesting thing to think about what you measure because there are two different sides to that coin. I always talk about what you measure multiplies, and half of
Mhm.
my life is spent trying to get people to pay attention to the numbers and not
Mm.
live scared of them.
Yeah.
A lot of times people don't know what they need to make a difference in their bottom line. And the
Mhm.
stats show that people need $700 more a month right now to be exactly where they were and cover the same amount of expenses that they could 2 years ago. So that's a big difference. And then
Mhm.
the second part of it is when you're in business, a lot of people aren't like just brutally honest with themselves to
Mhm.
understand the numbers so you know what do you need to do to achieve the accomplishments. But
Mhm.
I just think it's important to measure those things, but in the end it all comes back to the practice of exactly what you're talking about. The number doesn't actually have meaning. Numbers are
Mhm.
all
It's
these
just a way to measure. It's like it's
100%.
a point of information, that's it.
Exactly. They are these fictitious zeros and ones in a computer. Like most
You're
of us
right.
never even have tangible money anymore.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's when you reach that number or that amount of money allows you to do what so that you can what? Okay,
Mhm.
but so that you can what? So that
Right.
you can what? So that you can what? So you can get all the way back to what you really, really want and why. It has
Mhm.
nothing to do with the monetary number and
Mhm.
everything to do with what you actually want to do with your time.
Right. And I think that's the part that can get really confusing for people because most of us feel like we never have enough time.
Right.
But then also, what would we do with it? What do you mean, what would I do with it? Like, that's so much pressure. It feels like there's so many things that we have access to, but what do you actually want to do? Like, even like you said a minute ago, like having that level of awareness and being able to be really, really, really honest with themselves about what that looks like and why. Well, that means that you can't measure it based on somebody else's standards, right? You have to know what your standards are. And I think the other piece that's really helpful for that, so even in speaking on like the money things and the numbers and things like that, something I've been currently navigating myself is, it's so funny. I've done all of this work and I have really great grounded confidence, right? But when we have grounded confidence, that doesn't mean you're confident about every single thing that you do or every single area
Mhm.
of your life. And so one of the things I recognized recently, it's because I've been working really, really hard on that abundance mindset. And I'm like, I know I've got some of that down. Like this isn't fake. Like I know I've really got a hold on that, but there's something still missing there for me. And so when I, in my own life and then with the women that I work with too, one of the things that we talk about is creating boundaries, really healthy boundaries. But when we talk about boundaries, there's an educator called Carolyn Mace, and she talks about the fact that, boundaries do define the difference between who I am and what I need and who you are and what I need. But more importantly, in her world, it defines how you operate in your integrity. So that's what we talk a lot about with boundaries in my world is how do your boundaries help you stay in your integrity? And so when I really started reflecting on that, trying to figure out this abundance piece for myself, I realized I don't trust myself with money. And so as soon as I
Mhm.
identified that, I was like, okay, we've been here. We've built trust around other things. You have a lot of grounded confidence. And especially so, like, for instance, like I had to rebuild trust with myself around romantic relationships and how I dated and those kinds of things, and being able to recognize and honor red flags and know what was okay and wasn't okay, but then also acknowledge my feelings about things without judging them, but still being able to take the correct action for myself. And so once I identified that I did not trust myself with money, I was like, okay, like that's what this season is teaching myself to trust myself with money. And then that feels like the big piece that's been missing all of this time. So that's the progress that I'm making right now.
That's interesting. My whole revelation at the end of October was all around security and what I truly
Mm-hmm.
need to be secure. And we're in this space of I'm like debt free, all the things. Like I want it all gone. I want the house paid off. I want everything done. And like our car is at a 2% interest. Like it doesn't even in some ways
Right.
make sense to pay it completely off. But I'm like, I want it all gone. Or like
Uh-huh.
I'm creating angst for no reason whatsoever. Like
Mm.
it's not necessary. And my husband's like, why? Why are we doing this? Like,
Mhm.
we're doing it, but do we have to have it all done this year? Like,
Right.
like why are you feeling in this absolute panic?
Mm.
Oh, your brain will create things to worry about
Oh, yeah. It's gotta
because
create
you're
drama somewhere.
exactly, because you're so used to having that worry in those pathways. That's your foundation. You're so used
Mhm.
to living in that manner. And right now, like with so much uncertainty in our society,
Mhm.
you kind of grab onto that piece of what you're used to living. And if you're used to living in worry,
Mhm.
you will create something to worry about.
Right.
So that's my it's interesting. You don't trust yourself with money and mine's all about like gotta security, like
Right.
all security, which some of it's valid, but some of it isn't
Mhm.
whatsoever. Like it's just
Yeah.
unnecessary.
Well, and it's so funny because even with that security piece or the trust piece, like I was reading this book recently called literally just called Play. I think I've got like, I don't know, 18 pages left in it or something. But one of the things it was talking about, and that's the other piece that ties into the movement for my coaching too, was like, where are you experiencing joy and fun in your life? Like
Mhm.
doing things just because they make you happy and not forgetting everything else, but just making sure you have those pockets of opportunity to do that for yourself. And so I was reading this book Play, and one of the things he was talking about was the fact that like sometimes that inner dialogue, I think a key piece here is like you can have inner dialogue and it can be playful in a way because you're trying things on, but what determines whether it's play or not, or whether it's judgment or criticism or scarcity or any of that is whether you assign like a right or a wrong or a should or a shouldn't versus like acknowledging it, trying it on, and then discarding it if it doesn't feel like it fits. So I thought that was really interesting. And that's also been helping me talk, and I do that very organically with so many other things in my head. So I was like, okay, we can use the same approach here. So yeah.
Apply it in other spaces. It's
Hmm.
interesting. Are you someone that I talk a lot about acting in the gray and being okay with the gray, not having to be this or that and that.
I am so comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, I do not need certainty of hardly anything to be okay. I'm definitely like, I'm very nomadic. I'm very open minded. I'm very like, when you talk about the security piece, security to me is something completely different. Like, security to me is more autonomy than anything else. And so
Mhm.
that's really interesting sometimes too. And part of what's so beautiful about how I get to show up in my coaching is I feel like a lot of people really, really struggle with that. But when you can show them that it's okay and help them to start trusting that and stepping into that for themselves, that's where, getting really comfortable with it being a little uncomfortable or even more than a little uncomfortable is where you really start to hone into and be able to listen to what's going on here versus everything out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you ever read The Psychology of Money?
I don't think I read that one. No.
It's good.
Yeah.
Psychology of Money talks about kind of what you just said, but also like how the reality and the what people think they would do
The
and
perception of, yeah.
yeah, and what they actually do isn't rational at all.
Mhm.
So, like, the rationality does not really apply to money and
Right.
feelings around money. Because even though I say I want all this security and everything, Neil
Mhm.
and I figured it out, and in our 23 years of marriage, we have moved now 15 times
Oh, wow. That's a lot of
intentionally,
disruption.
right?
Yeah.
So, I'm
I'm
always
like, "No, thank you."
I'm always the one that takes us off on these random adventures. Okay, we learned that and did that. We love this part. Let's keep that little bit and let's go try
Mhm.
this now. So it's like what
Mhm.
you think. It's so weird. Our brains play with us so much. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
So going into the fall in this next 90 days, this fourth quarter of the year,
Mhm.
what are your feelings, Rebecca? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you helping people through?
So, what I'm feeling right now is excitement. Um, just with feeling like that this piece with the abundance and scarcity and the trust is unlocking even more. So I'm super excited about that. Made the bold claim to do 30 podcast interviews in 30 days in October. So I'm super excited to do that because I have a feeling that that's going to really get me outside of my comfort zone in a lot of ways. And that's exactly what it's meant to do. But also, like, connect me in circles and spaces with faces that I wouldn't normally collect with. And for me, that's where the beauty lies, is weak ties theory. It's not those people that you have that strong direct correction or connection with, but it's that ripple effect of
Mhm, mhm,
just spreading out the connection and the ideas.
mhm.
So I'm super excited about that. Super excited about 2024. Things with coaching now that I've shifted my niche to see how that's going to really get some traction and change lives, and how that will be different from before. And then our events company, which you know about, but Kaleidoscope Effect, just we have changed our whole concept moving forward in 2024. So we're keeping our winter celebration, our winter basque, where it's a celebration of self. But pretty much everything else that we're doing in 2024 is definitely more, I don't want to say more fulfilling, but I guess more organic for Alicia and I. So
Mm.
with the travel piece and the connection piece and the community piece, but again, like being in different circles versus like the same circles where we are physically here in Grand Rapids. So yeah. What
Ex-
about you?
Exciting. Well, I'm really focused in on the whole idea of being obsessive about the discipline of the long-term game. Like
Mm,
finishing the jobs you've started and
hmm
systematizing what you can, but bringing new elements to them to keep them really fun and exciting and reaching new
hmm
people. I had the conversation the other day, and it's like there's so much of what I've created now that I'm
hmm
like, I just love it. Like, it really honestly, I like to get up at 5:30 or 6. I like to
Uh-huh.
be on a little Zoom working accountability type thing. Then we take a walk and we have some breakfast, and then I work a little bit more, and then we go lift weights, and then we come back and I work a little bit more, and then we have lunch, and, like, I get to do life with usually a puppy
Right.
in my lap, and, like, you don't even know they're
Aw,
down there.
cutie pie, right?
Like, I love making massive amounts of impact with a very fluid and wellness focused,
Mhm,
inspired day. Like, so getting to focus in on that and realize, okay, how can I do it with even more intention and reach even
mhm,
more people? Because I'm living it in a big
mhm.
way, and then traveling to those people that I really collaborate with and partner with that are where I was 5 years ago. Just
Right.
starting out, just getting it and just starting to be intentional in creating their day, their life, paying off things so that they can buy the house, across the country where
Mhm,
they wanna live, and figuring out what that looks like. Because that's one of the things through e-commerce, there isn't a right way.
mhm,
So many different ways to create and live that life that you want to live. So I'm focused in on that with the 90-day goals, but then running those out to the 5 and the 10-year
mhm,
goals. So, like you said, talking about those measures and those numbers in
mhm.
ways that can be really, really impactful, and then
Yeah.
applying the patience and the discipline
Mhm.
to actually get it done and to
Right.
accomplish those really big
But
things.
also pausing to celebrate the points that should be celebrated too, and not just moving on to
Exactly.
the next.
Exactly, exactly. So it's an interesting, I think a lot of people have to deal with the ebbs and flows of appreciating what is while striving for what's next
Mhm.
and dancing that dance. It's a dance.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you had to use one word to describe, like, the emotion that you anticipate you'll be feeling for the rest of the year, what would it be?
For the rest of this year,
Yep.
hmm, that's a great question. Because I feel like I'm in this middle of the reinvention of,
Mhm.
you know what? I'm gonna say that. Last year, my word was mastery, and I
Okay.
don't feel like I figured out what I wanted to master. But
Oh,
do you know what
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
This year, my word was communicate, and I think that's coming. I feel like,
Mhm.
I've really been doubling down on LinkedIn and
Mhm.
playing in that space, and for some reason, I feel a lot of freedom there,
Mhm.
to just be authentically who I am as a businesswoman
Yeah.
in a different way than I do on Instagram and Facebook, and I know I'm in all the places, but it's an interesting, just new place to play.
The dynamic is different.
It is different,
Mhm.
and, so I think reinvention of mastery. How about that?
Okay.
Because
I
I feel
like
like
that.
can I have 2 words, Rebecca?
You can, I'll let you. And then if you had to describe, like, the first 3 quarters of this year with one word, what would it be?
Oh my goodness.
On the spot.
I am dedicated. Like,
Okay.
I am dedicated to the grind and figuring it out.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
that.
I'm a dedicated person. Like, I do not give up. Like,
Mhm.
I will figure out how are we gonna go next level and how am
Mhm.
I gonna help more people or differently or kind of meet them where they're at to
Mhm.
make it happen. I'm good at that. I'm good at that.
Okay.
Okay, now back at you.
So, first 3 months, I would say my word would definitely be discovery. So, there's been a lot of peeling back the layers, uncovering things this year, learning more about myself, learning more in general, being exposed to different perspectives and level of achievement. So, I think discovery definitely is the fitting one for the first 3 quarters. For the last quarters, or the last quarter, I think it's going to be joy. Like, that's something, and it's so funny. I wrote something the other day. I'm trying to think where I wrote it. My favorite artist to listen to right now, her name is Ali Anna, which is so fitting because when I was growing up, I had an aunt that called me Pollyanna because I was always so optimistic. And I can even think like a few years ago, I was playing softball for a league. And I remember one day in particular, there was this kind of grumpy umpire that was working the game, and I was out on the field just like tearing it up, but every time I popped up or got to the base or whatever it was, I was just beaming. And he was like, "Are you like?" He was dumbfounded. He was like, "Are you always this happy?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." Like, I don't know how
Um,
else to be. That doesn't mean I don't have moments where I just like want to, roll into myself and make the world disappear. But overall, like, joy is just the thing. And I feel like there's this next level is going to bring like even more, even deeper, even more intense joy, but also be able to spread it even more with other people, especially women too. So claiming
oh,
that
I
for the
love it.
next
Okay,
quarter.
so you wanna hear about the complete alignment?
Of course I do.
Okay. So I love all of that. And I just put in my little I use Trello to plan
Uh-huh.
things. Like when
Oh,
I
we do too.
okay, when I have ideas, but I haven't made the graphic for it yet.
Yeah.
But I have on there that I want a graphic that says, I'm a Pollyanna in a I'm a Pollyanna in a pick a side society, creating
Uh-huh.
independence in a world where both sides done gone crazy.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So that is so funny. And you got so quiet when I was saying that. I was like, does she even know who Pollyanna is?
I totally do because I was like, I'm going to post this, but I'm kind of worried that no one's going to know the reference.
Oh, people of a certain age will.
Exactly. For the ones that it is intended to reach, it will reach
Yep.
them. But
But if you need like the kick ass current musical version of her, it's Ali Anna. She's got like all
which is
that.
so for Alicia, the owl part, we're both bird people and you are a
Yeah.
bit as well. So there,
Oh, I'm a bird person.
that's perfect too.
Mm-hmm.
I love it
Yeah.
all. No, I got goosebumps when you told your story, and I was
That's
like,
so funny.
"Whatever."
We did not pre-conspire.
No, we didn't. So, with that in mind, I think we should come back and have a beginning of November chat too.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Okay, let's do it.
All
Let's do
right,
it.
lady.
All
Yeah,
right,
this
well,
has
here
been
we go. Let's
great.
kick off this 4th quarter, and let's just make it happen in a big, joyful,
Yes.
and impactful way. Thank you for joining me, Rebecca.
Thank you, Tanya. This was absolutely amazing.
All right. We will post below all the different places you can find us, but we love any feedback. And what should we talk about next?
Yeah, that part.
Exactly. Give us some ideas. All
Right.
right, bye.
Bye.